Hello everyone. Hope you all must be doing great. And today we are going to discuss about one of the prestigious Greek philosopher Socrates. Hope you would appreciate this video. So let's get into it. So we will start with a small introduction about Socrates. Later we will discuss about some of his famous quotes. Then we will come to his principles, or you can say his teachings. So we don't have much authentic information when he was born, but it is said that he was born in 470 or 469 BC in Athens, Greek. So as we know, he is known as the father of Western philosophy. He was the first Western moral thinker because his predecessor never dared to question the teachings of religion and the practices of society. But Socrates was not ready to accept things until or unless it has proper reasons and it can be testified. So that's why he was different from his preceding philosophers. And we should keep in mind that Socrates practiced what he preached. So that's why he was very different. Okay. Now you can say he started an era of enlightenment which helped his disciples like Plato and other successive thinkers to unlock the new logical and the moral dimensions in the society. But ultimately, you can understand he was quite different from the society or the whatever happening at that time. So that's why he was not liked by the people in power of the society, and he was charged of corrupting the youth. So finally he was sentenced to death, and though he had option to escape, but he did not do so because it would be contrary to his principles. So let's discuss some of his famous quotes. The very first is, "I'm not Athenian or Greek, but a citizen of the world." I think in this quote, he's talking like a cosmopolitan. And if we all become a cosmopolitan, this whole world, the people belonging to this world become cosmopolitan, I think all the major problem of this world can be solved. Because somewhere we all are indulged in a competition and rivalry to get, or you can say to grab, better opportunity, better resources for our country. The leaders, corporate houses and other sections of society are just thinking about their own country's welfare. But if we break this stereotype and we understand that whole human race is one, together only we can grow and develop, then only we can fight all the major problems today humanity is facing, like poverty, terrorism, human trafficking, racial discrimination, etc. His second quote that is very famous, "The true wisdom is in knowing you know nothing." I adore this quote because once we are in this misconception that we have enough knowledge, we are self-sufficient, then our growth stops. And there we become saturated. So definitely we are not going to explore the new dimensions in our life. We won't be able to think much about the morality or immorality. So if you need the growth, or you can say the true development, then definitely one should not be so contented or should not be so self-sufficient. And even you can relate this quote with the famous quote of Steve Jobs, where he said, "Stay foolish and stay hungry." And I'm not discussing too much here because already I have discussed this quote later in this video. So let's have a look on other quotes. "He is a man of courage who does not run away, but remains at his post and fights against the enemy." Through this quote, Socrates has covered some of his important values like commitment, perseverance, and courage of conviction. Because here what he's saying means a man should be committed towards his duty, towards his goal. And second thing, when he's saying that a man of courage who does not run away, means you should have the quality of perseverance. It means people should stick with the principles even during the time of difficulties. And here he's talking about the courage of conviction, because one should follow his principles like Socrates did, because he had opportunity that he could run away, but he didn't. So here he was saying that courage of conviction is very important in life, because even if it is the matter of death or life, You should follow your principles with courage. His next quote is, "The unexamined life is not worth living." I think this question has been asked in 2019 UPSC. And here actually he said that without questioning life, one would not be truly living. Actions would have no understanding of being right or wrong. That means it doesn't matter what majority thinks, and it is not necessary that what majority thinks could be absolutely right. So, in other words, he disapproved blind traditions and blind following. So, let's move ahead. One of the interesting quotes of Socrates is on your screen. By all means, marry. If you get a good wife, you will be happy. If you get a bad one, you will become a philosopher. So now you have to think about this. Later you can decide about it. So here I have divided the teachings and the thoughts of Socrates into 4 parts. So first is the dialectics or inquiry. That was the Socrates method to seek true knowledge. Second was pursuit of virtue or ethical intellectualism or importance of knowledge. Third one is living philosophically. And fourth one is moderate living and spiritual development. So now we'll discuss it one by one in brief. So Socrates was the ardent seeker of the true knowledge. Actually, Socrates stressed on meaningful conversations with people on ideas like justice, righteousness, and virtue. And he was determined that real philosophy will not be understood until or unless people will learn to raise doubt, think in a logical manner, question the authority and worth of the cherished beliefs and tenet, etc. So here we can say thus he favored freedom of speech and expression. So students, Socrates was a very down to earth person, because he was a firm believer that the only true wisdom is in knowing that we know nothing. Because once a person believes that he has immense knowledge, he will become saturate and his hunger for exploring and understanding new things will be over. And definitely it will have a negative impact on the society, because on one hand society will be full of dogmas and blind faith, and as well as the path of wisdom, knowledge and innovation will be impeded. On the other hand, it will give rise to ego and anger, because once a person has been caught in this misconception that he is self-sufficient and he won't give importance to the views and knowledge of other persons, and this could lead to chaos and incoordination within society. So we can say this approach of the Socrates could be named as Socratic ignorance also, which is very relevant for this modern era. In other words, we can say it is very important, it is very applicable at present scenario, because if we want the development and the peace in the society, then we should be open to the thoughts of the others, as well as we should be open to change ourselves also, and we should not think like that we are just self-sufficient, we have enough knowledge. Okay. So, but before moving ahead, we should also keep in this mind and this Socrates, through his dialectic discussion, he did not want to prove his superiority or knowledge, but he wanted to accumulate more knowledge. And this is very true, because suppose if you take the examples of students, the students who are just indulged in discussions about some relevant topics, I think different minds will bring some different ideas and different approaches, and that would be wonderful. And that's why it should be always welcomed. Now we'll discuss about the Socrates' pursuit of virtue or ethical intellectualism or importance of knowledge. So before moving ahead, we should know what virtue exactly is. So most of you students must be knowing what virtue is. That is a behavior that shows high moral standards. It could be like honesty, courage, compassion, generosity, fidelity, integrity, fairness, self-control and prudence. So these all are the examples of the virtues. For example, a person who has developed the virtue of honesty is often referred as a honest person, because he or she tends to be honest even in all the circumstances. So students, you should remember that Socrates equated knowledge with virtue. and ultimately because of this virtue, life will be very ethical, or you can say ultimately it will lead to an ethical conduct or an ethical life. And he believed that, like knowledge, virtue can be taught and it could be learned. And he said that people do bad as they are not aware of what is good and what is bad. He stressed that people should live a life of virtue, and only virtuous life is capable of bringing real happiness. So he stressed that instead of focusing on honor, worldly pleasure, wealth and glory, man should concentrate on pursuing wisdom, true knowledge, high moral standards, and accomplishment of his duties. In other words, he stressed that if people can be persuaded and made aware about good and bad, the maximum problems can be solved. He said everyone wants to be good. Thus, right knowledge leads to right action, and people can be made virtuous by imparting the right knowledge. And I think the Socrates was quite right, because if we start inculcating this virtue among children at very early age, they will start learning it. They will start grasping it. So this, and gradually it will come into their blood. It means they will start practicing it. In the same manner, different types of workshops are also conducted for the civil servants as well as in the corporate houses, so that the people can learn the elements of the virtue and they can nurture high moral actions and character. So now students, we will now understand the other thoughts of the Socrates under the umbrella of living philosophically. His famous quote was, "The unexamined life is not worth living." And this he talked when he was in jail. So here he pointed towards the ability to raise question. What Socrates means by this quote is that a life without the pursuit of wisdom and knowledge is no life at all. He would rather give up his life than not be able to question what was happening. So according to Socrates, unlike animals, humans have capacity to think and evaluate about the real purpose of life. People should know what are their right and wrong conduct, and they should rectify their actions. So life is worthless for the people who float through life with no ideas what their values and views are. Just they run behind the worldly things and pleasure. So Socrates believed that the ability to ask, to examine, and to understand would make a life whole. So Socrates truly meant that without questioning life, one would not be truly living. Actions would have no understanding of being right or wrong. So Socrates said that what majority thinks may not be always right. In other words, we can say he disapproved blind traditions and followings. Now next is Socrates' views on moderate living and spiritual development. He favored mild asceticism, through which a person can attain a high spiritual and moral state by practicing self-denial, self-mortification, etc. So in order to gain real aim of life, people should not run behind ordinary and physical pleasure, because without the elimination of such menial things, spiritual growth is not possible. Here we can say Socrates said one should follow the path of spiritual development so that soul can be strengthened, which is the ultimate truth. So in other words, students, we can also say he believed that soul is divine while body is mortal. So instead of making body stronger, soul should be strengthened, which will help to achieve the ultimate life and will help to differentiate between the morality and immorality. So while going through this Socrates' life, we will also come to know that he stressed too much on morality. Okay, and for this he gave the solution also, means how the soul can be strengthened. So he said that soul can be strengthened by infusing virtues in one's life. So students, that's all for today's video. And while going through this video, you have noticed that points are overlapping, because you should understand that things can't be learned in a vacuum, because now we are going through the philosophy, or you can say the thoughts of a person, and definitely these thoughts would be interlinked, and they can't be just can be studied in vacuum. So definitely there would be a overlapping. And but as you will go through and you will go through some books, definitely you will understand in a better sense. So thanks for watching. We'll meet soon with a new video. Till then, take care and goodbye.